You're listening to Skate of Thrones, your go-to podcast for dialed-in LA Kings coverage.
Welcome back to Skate of Thrones, your favorite Los Angeles Kings podcast. As always, I'm your host, Casey Kasliner, as the Kings take a shutout victory, 3-0 over the Edmonton Oilers here on Saturday afternoon. It's a heated rivalry, of course, and this game maybe didn't have the intensity of some of the prior matchups, but the Kings nonetheless will take it, and it's a big win for standings purposes. The Kings now 4 points up on the Oilers for second place in the division, and now just 1 point back of the Vegas Golden Knights, who will play the Flames tonight. And so the Kings could clinch the playoffs as early as tonight. If the Flames lose in any fashion to the Golden Knights, then the Kings clinch. Otherwise, I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing ever if the Flames won, because the Kings will clinch at some point eventually. And, of course, like I mentioned, the Kings are just 1 point back of Vegas. And so that could change tonight, but the Kings really want that divisional crown. I mean, they want home ice, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But a solid win nonetheless, not the most exciting game for some obvious reasons. And that's because the Oilers' best players did not play tonight. They're very depleted right now with injuries. Leon Draisaitl's out. Matthias Ekholm on the back end is out. Connor McDavid is out, importantly. Starting goaltender Stuart Skinner is out. John Klingberg, Evander Kane. I mean, the list goes on. And the Kings definitely had that advantage. They did not play well in the first period, and Jim Hiller kind of admitted that. You know, it wasn't a bad period in terms of action. Like, the Kings had some good chances, and Edmonton really didn't. You're really going to lack chances when you don't have your top-end guys like, you know, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But, yeah, a solid win for the Kings nonetheless. A good second period, a period they've struggled in this season. The goals to start out things. Kevin Fiala, well, actually, before Kevin Fiala scored, Jeff Malott had an incredible would-be goal, but it was offsides. And you kind of have to feel for Jeff Malott. It would have been his first career NHL goal, and it was kind of a Bobby Orr-style play as he, you know, went flying and kind of was a little bit tripped up and found the back of the net past Calvin Pickard. But the goal did not count, as it was pretty clearly offsides a little bit earlier. But it didn't matter because the Kings would continue to pile on some offense in that period. Kevin Fiala, that's his 30th goal of the year. Came off a nice play. Alex Laferriere took a shot, and, you know, what maybe wasn't the best quality shot, but it was a shot for rebound kind of thing, and it led to Fiala getting the rebound in his possession and putting it through with Calvin Pickard out of position. And a really good play by Jordan Spence to set up the play, and then Kevin Fiala with some really good neutral zone navigation, taking it up, giving it to Laferriere, and then the rest is history. So a really good play for Fiala to get his 30th goal of the year. And I want to talk about him just for a moment, because Jim Hiller talked about Kevin Fiala in the press conference as a player that the Kings really asked more of early on in the season. Kevin Fiala kind of wanted to change the narrative about himself. He was getting these kind of unintelligent penalties, and, you know, the narrative around him probably wasn't the way he wanted it to be. And Hiller talked about how not only the Kings asked more of him, but Kevin Fiala asked more of himself to, you know, become more versatile, become more of a net front presence, not just be, you know, a dangling player. And Alex Laferriere talked about that as well, how, you know, Fiala is older than him, but he has taught him a lot in, you know, versatility. With 30 goals, that's Fiala's first 30-goal season as an LA King. So, you know, a big moment for him. And one other thing, too, Jim Hiller said he admitted this hasn't been Fiala's best season, but the fact that he has had 30 goals in what has not been his best season is really impressive. So good to see that from Kevin Fiala, because we know that, you know, he's had his ups and downs, especially earlier in the year, but right now he really just, in the year 2025, ever since, you know, the break, he's been just so good. I forgot to mention the lineup changes. Jordan Spence back in. I mentioned the good play he made to get that secondary assist. No Muvarari today. It was a 12-6 lineup. I mean, obviously, the Kings have been pretty solid on the 12-6 and 11-7. That's something they flipped around, and Jim Hiller talked about that pregame. And so, yeah, the Kings' second goal would come a few minutes later, about 7 to be exact. Andrei Kuzmenko scores his 11th goal of the year and his 5th as an LA King. And, man, he's been so hot lately for LA, and that was a nice goal. Let it rip. I'll admit, prior to that goal, I mean, it was 1-0 Kings, and the Oilers were playing pretty good despite not having their star players. They were shutting down a lot of Kings passes through the neutral zone. But Kuzmenko stayed hot, got that goal. He ripped one on the near side, and it was a feed from Kempe. And that was his 5th goal, like I mentioned, as a King, but 11th point in the last 9 games. Made it 2-0 Kings. To start out the third period, like really not much. The Kings actually did go 0 for 4 on power plays today, which isn't great, of course, but the Kings are not known as a power play team. I mean, if they can still get wins without having their power play be, stellar, I think coming into today it was around 16%. It's probably lower now. And so, yeah. And so one other thing is in the post game, Jim Hiller talked about Tanner Jeannot and Alex Turcotte. No real clear timeline for them. They obviously would like to have them back before playoffs. And, that fourth line today did not do bad at all. Very solid. But, of course, having Turcotte and Jeannot with Hellenius in the middle has been solid. But obviously, I mean, Jeff Malott has looked really good for what he, has put in, and probably should have had a goal today. The Kings would end off the game with a Trevor Lewis empty netter, his 6th goal of the year, unassisted. And so a solid win for the Kings. That's the 5th shutout of the year for Darcy Kemper, and you couldn't have asked more from him. I mean, he got so much praise from everyone that, spoke in the press conference. Laferriere, Andrzej Kopitar. Kopitar said they, have a chance every time he suits up, and I would be inclined to agree. I mean, Darcy Kemper has done wonders. We'll see how he translates in the playoffs, and just his ability to stay composed, especially with how good the Kings defense is, but I feel like he transcends that. And Kuzmenko also got some praise from Kopitar. I saw it myself as well. I mean, he can create something out of nothing on a lot of different occasions, and we saw that from him with his goal. I mean, it wasn't a grade A chance. It was an opportunity for him to shoot the puck, and I mean, the Kings shoot. Good things happen for them. They've preached that a lot this year, and they've got it going right now in the first line. I mean, multiple lines have been showing out this year, particularly today. I mean, the first and the third line were really good. But, we've seen the scoring spread out, and Alex Laferriere talked about that too. Just the ability for the Kings to have depth is so important. And it's not like they didn't have the depth earlier in the season. I mean, really pre-Andrei Kuzmenko, like they still had depth, but I think adding him and also just guys really betting on themselves and stepping up at the right time has given LA an edge when it comes to really all the forwards. So that'll be interesting to see. Drew Doughty, he was a topic of discussion as well. He's not 100% right now, of course, but he's still putting in the work. And, Jim Hiller, I think, really is just rolling with the depth, kind of next man up mentality. And, of course, Drew Doughty is still a staple to the Kings, but his play has not been elite this year. He had an assist today, but I want to talk about kind of the big picture stuff for a moment. I mean, the Kings, of course, win 3-0. It's, a game that going into it maybe would have been really nice to kind of have a preview of what a potential Edmonton series could look like for the 4th year in a row, especially since, I mean, the Kings this year feel a lot more polished, a lot more deep than previous years. And now with this win, of course, there's a real possibility the Kings forego playing Edmonton and likely would play the St. Louis Blues if they do end up winning the division, because they would play the wild card. And, the wild card is pretty interesting right now. It's very close. 1 and 2, St. Louis and Minnesota, separated by only 2 points. They're very likely going to be the representatives as Calgary's on the brink of elimination. But the bottom line is the Kings want to win as many games as they can to end out the year. And playing Edmonton, I think the Kings definitely would have an edge. Like, I would pick them to probably win if they have home ice advantage, which is it's trending toward the direction that they will. But, I mean, they'll either play St. Louis or Minnesota. They fared well against Minnesota this year. They did lose to them pretty recently on the road, but I'd argue that was kind of a fluky game, given that LA was not very well disciplined in that game. The Blues, the Kings, have a win, a loss, and an overtime loss against, and I think, they're a team that is getting hot at the right time. I'd still pick the Kings, and, they're 2-1-0 against the Wild, LA is, so either way, they're going to get probably the matchup they'd want. I'd argue like Edmonton is also a matchup they'd want if they're at home, but I think like you'd certainly prefer winning the division. I mean, the Kings have only won the division once in their history, and they very well could, depending on how Vegas plays down the stretch. Of course, the Knights had a tough 4-0 loss to Winnipeg the other night. They're on a 2-game losing streak. They're going to try to rebound tonight against Calgary, but overall, not the most exciting game tonight, but it's a good win nonetheless for LA. They can, take what they can get. I think, they're just really playing to their game. They're sticking to it. That's now 4 wins in a row for LA. They've allowed 2 or fewer goals in the last 4 games. Of course, shut out the Oilers, only allowed 2 against Utah, and then allowed 1 goal against both the Jets and the Sharks. And that was coming off a 2-game losing streak. So really impressive stuff from LA. And I think that they're really rounding out things well. The Andrei Kuzmenko topic has really been just so prevalent in the press conferences and just, in the media, because he comes and, the Kings just feel like they have a lot more energy and they have the ability to be deeper. So I think that's something that I've really noticed so far as well. But yeah, definitely an efficient game for the Kings. Of course, they did not play well early on. They kind of picked things up. We've seen that from them a few times this year, more than a few. And so, yeah, good to see them get chances as well. And, I think for them, they definitely could have won by more in this game. They had chances. They hit the post at one point. Like, there were a lot of opportunities for them. But I think definitely they'll, take this win and sort of have a short-term memory, knowing that they have to finish off the year strong if they want to reach their goals. And to kind of bring up what the end of the year looks like for LA, they'll play Seattle on Monday at home. They have 3 games in a row at home after this one. They'll have Anaheim on Thursday and then Colorado on Saturday. And then they go to Edmonton for a road trip against them and Seattle, and then they'll finish the year against Calgary. So, these aren't necessarily easy wins. I think Seattle could always be a tough game. You're playing them twice. Of course, you have Edmonton one more time. They very likely will have some of their contributors back, like McDavid, like Draisaitl. So we'll see. And then, of course, Colorado. The last time the Kings played Colorado, they were blanked 4-0 pretty recently. And then, Calgary is also a sneaky team. But the Kings, they want home ice advantage. They admitted, they're certainly thinking about the playoffs, and I don't think it's something that you can necessarily worry about. I think you have to take it game by game, but I think, certainly with how good they're playing at Crypto, they certainly would want to play there and have an opportunity to, have the majority of the games there to begin the playoffs. And yeah, like I mentioned, 29-4-4 at home. Vegas has also a very good home record. So, we'll see how they play down the stretch, but Edmonton, 4 points back of the Kings now. The Kings just kind of have to skate by, do their game the rest of the way, and hopefully for them clinch, either the second or first spot in the Pacific. I think them, getting the third spot would be kind of concerning. Making the playoffs is something that they should be proud of, but at the same time, they don't necessarily always play good on the road. The Kings played well today. Certainly a game that they should be proud of, and maybe not the most electric game, but it's a win nonetheless, especially with who was out. And credit to the Oilers, they played better than I sort of expected going into it without, their key contributors, but they checked hard, they played well, and that's the brand of Oilers hockey that we're used to seeing, especially when they play the Kings. We know that they certainly would have liked to win today, and they didn't, but I think, the season goes on and then not many games left. So the Kings will have just a few games left to end the year, and we'll have coverage on Monday against Seattle. But let me know your guys' thoughts on this game. The Kings win 3-0. Make sure to hit like and subscribe as Darcy Kemper with his 5th shutout of the year, leading the Kings to the promised lands for 4 wins in a row. I'll talk to you guys in the next one, and have a great rest of your day.